Hey, would you guys do me a big favor and subscribe because I need to get big enough on YouTube in order to do giveaways, and I want to give you guys stuff like this Play to Win signed Cam and Dylan Sharpied up Matt. So go ahead and click that button and enjoy. Why should you watch this video? We made it out to Vegas and we competed in the single elimination, not so very tightly run tournament that Wizards put on over here. I won my first round, as did everybody else in this room in our group, and then we all lost in the second round. Again, it was a single elimination event, run kind of sloppily, which we'll talk about. But the most important thing to go over is the meta, as always. What cards are people playing? There are some shredders. They came out, and typically the spread that you're going to find is whatever you're playing, a Tim Necrom, another somewhat meta deck, maybe a Kinnan, maybe a Thrasios, maybe a something, and then a wild ball, mostly a turbo wild ball. And that seemed to be a common story that we're finding the whole time.
Is it cold? Because that's probably
Nick, microphone over there. What did you see meta-wise in tournament?
Meta-wise?
What'd you play against?
Let me think. So I will say, like, in a generality, I saw predominantly during the Swiss and during the opening rounds, you would have on average 2 meta decks and 2 fringe or off meta decks. I thought that was interesting. Everybody I talked to seemed to have that kind of synopsis of what their first rounds looked like. So that's cool. You got to see a lot of different and varied strategies. I will say the first and second round of the game, you definitely saw a lot of people where not allowing proxies deeply affected their ability to have a performance in the game. There was a lot of, it's hard to even say it's fringe because they were limited by what they were allowed to run. And let's face it, if you don't allow proxies, a lot of your success is going to come from the wallet if you're not careful and if you don't take the time to learn how to overcome the strongest card of all, the credit card, right? And so that does affect things. For example, in the first game that I did win, it was a slog because you're playing against strategies that kind of reward poor decision making a lot of the time because the cards themselves aren't efficient enough.
Explain that. Rewards poor decision making.
You'll have cards that you won't see in the meta, which is not a bad thing. Let's be very clear. Like Thayer himself has proven you can have plenty of cards that don't see the meta and be effective. But what they'll do is they'll provide scenarios in the game where nobody is profiting from it and everybody suffers and the game slows due to it in a negative way. And if we're going to be playing games where time is going to shut down the game immediately and there's not going to be proceeding, you need to be able to not slow down the game for no purpose. So I saw a lot of cards where it would be playing a big thing that blows something up, a lot of blinking, right? Really cute, really fun. It didn't affect the game. Nobody's board state changed. That's what happened in mine, except for like nobody came out ahead in this scenario. And because of that strategy, because of these like big high CMC tap out cards that even though we can counter, we can stop, we don't want to because it's not really affecting things. It just slows it down and everyone keeps their shields up for the real stuff, the game-winning spells, the things that you still need to watch out for. The game I played first, I played with an excellent Rogthras pilot. Fully Gucci'd out deck. He and I were gushing over each other's like foiled out blinking here. We love that part of the format. And we played with 2 casuals next to us. And we're happy we did. There's no qualms about it. But the entire game turned into just me and him looking at each other, answering each other, stopping each other, not even concerning ourselves with the other 2 players. They were just a chaotic entity that didn't really contribute to the game. And because of that, it was more random. You want to decrease the randomness. We don't want things that are just coming into play, changing the game, changing the paradigm for no reason. We had to deal with it, but when you're in a competitive like format, you don't want to have to learn how to do that because you're never going to see that again.
It affects the meritocracy of the system.
Yeah, it was a 1v1 and this randomly sometimes somebody will beast within something, right? Like, and you just dealt with it. And it was almost, I will give this to the Rogthras player again, shout out. It was almost a coup d'etat. We were able to manipulate the other 2 players who didn't have as much experience to do anything. And we did it early, realized we could, and we both stopped because we felt bad. We did it almost as a joke, right? Like we both had Gaia's Cradle out. And we're like, oh, you should hit his cradle because of X reason. He's like, oh, you should hit his cradle because of Y reason. In reality, he should have hit both. And we were jokingly saying it, but the guy's like, no, but like, okay, so I'm going to hit both, reanimate it, hit the other one. And we're like, okay. And then one time we had a spell that got cast, and I was just like saying, oh, well, that's Rograk. Like, it's, you know how powerful that is? It's a 0-drop. If you put him back, it's on 2. And he's like, you're right. Boom. And the guy like looked, and we both almost laughed. He did the same thing to me on something like inconsequential too. It was like an exile of a commander. And so so kudos to him. We were very polite about it. Once we realized that we had that kind of power, we stopped, and we just stopped talking, and we just played the game 1v1, just dealt with the chaos. I took it out by the weird life total rule at the end.
Yeah, we should talk about that. So with the tournament format, they had a hard cut at the time limit, and then tell me, how did they determine who the winner was?
So it was life total at like cap of time limits. So we got, like I said, the game slowed down because of the peculiar cards and choices from the other players. Again, everyone needs to learn. Everyone needs to have fun. Totally understandable. But they were playing, because it slowed down so much, I just took it at the end naturally by having more life total. I mean, toward the end of it, I did pivot my playstyle to make sure I had the most life total. Ironically, I was on Kenrith. Be advised, we did not know that was the rule of this game. We also did not know of a single elimination going into it. So that's a whole other topic. Bad communication on parts of the tournament organizers. Really, nowhere is it listed that actually is what was happening. But anyway, I digress. But I didn't even gain life with Kenrith, which is funny. And I just made sure nobody could hit me when you get down to the last 10 minutes of the game. It was a weird strategy. It worked. The Roggrass player couldn't do anything about life total. So. And again, we were 1v1ing essentially. Yeah, that was peculiar.
Okay, let's talk about this. What was the single cast that you would call the misplay of the game? Misplay of the tournament. It could be yours or another game.
From a personal perspective, let's think here. It's hard to tell. I tutored for a birds just to have a flying blocker, and then didn't realize I didn't have green at the time, and it kind of impacted. I could have done a couple things. That wasn't really a big thing. It's just, and I managed to get it out anyway, so that's not a good example. But it does tell you that, even when the games get weird, remember you're there for a purpose. Don't let it get weird. Don't lose focus. Even when the game is goofy, never lose focus. And that kind of was a good jolt reminder to me. I would say the second game, okay? I was playing with essentially one of my brothers. He's a Yuriko pilot. And we were playing, it was Yuriko, myself, another essentially more casual-oriented player. He was on a low-color mono-blue deck that doubles wizard triggers. And he was self-professed new, very polite gentleman. And then a very talented Durevi pilot. The bird. Durevi, I can't remember. The bird that untaps things. We put down some rule law effects. We were stagnating the game. Drevi's starting to pop. I'm just getting a good board state too. Yuriko's on the behind. The mono blue player's not doing much. He goes to cast a Court of Calling for 4. Now, I know that's a win con. Here's where it was difficult. Porter is one of my brothers, my best friends, right? The other player, the Yuriko pilot. We told everyone that. I know it's a win attempt. I know it's a win on top. Win attempt. I don't want to act like I know so much and I'm telling Porter to do something for 2 reasons. 1, Porter is stubborn. If by doing so, he may not even listen to me. 2, I don't want it to, when we answer this, it become oh, well, these are the 2 friends, they're sharing information. It's collusion. Yeah. I know it's a win attempt. So I tell Porter, though, but we are going to lose the game. I tell Porter, I have nothing. I'm going to pass. This is a win attempt. Porter in hand has a swan song and a force of will. I don't know it at the time, but he told us after. But he acted like he was going to counter it, right? So I knew he had some type of counter magic. It goes to him. He passes. He's not. He thinks about it for a while, and he passes. And he gets out in a meal. Blink, infinite guys, cradle can tap us down forever. We can't break out. Wins the game. Now that's a clear misplay on my brother Porter. Right, a clear big one.
Sure.
But my misplay was I should have just been even more explicit.
Direct with the politics.
Yeah, I should have just foregone the trying to be coy about it. But to be frank, I thought he would
Have read
do it.
that.
I thought he would have read it. I thought he would do it. I thought like that. There was no debate about it.
Okay.
And I made sure to say this is a win attempt. I literally said it. This is a win attempt, and I thought that's all I would need to say. So what this also shows me is, as much as you have trust in another, and they become smarter, they become better, you can't. You sometimes do just need to bite the bullet and be direct. I should have just been.
Too.
People make mistakes. I don't blame them. I'm not even mad about it.
Yeah.
I will say I was upset that we were both potted up in the same pod on 2 out of a giant tournament. Like it always happens. It's annoying as shit.
Yeah.
I almost wish you could like have a buddy rule where you don't accidentally end up with buddies or something. But
that would be nice.
But yeah, so that's the big one is don't be clear, be explicit. Be explicit. If you see the line, you can do things unless it makes sense not to, because you can't always rely on others too. And let's be frank, the reason why I'm not like upset with Porter is I didn't have a counterspell.
I'm always in that position as
like
well.
I always like how can I be upset?
I watch other people misuse their interaction, and it's like, well, I'm over here with a counterspell list.
Yeah,
or with a counter.
I didn't help. List. It's just because he punted the game. It's I could have had a counter. So anyway, but that would be the biggest like mistake. So
fair enough. Faster, slower? Are you seeing the? I'm not seeing a lot of flash. Like I didn't see any, at least.
I didn't see any. I wouldn't say it was faster or slower. I mean, we're all on turn 3 or 4 still. That's like what it is, but that's what I think it's always been.
You think the meta is in a period of transition or settling out?
Transitions still. We can see that based on essentially what, like all the, the EDH or what is it, the top 16 lists and things like that. Like there's still not one that's just winning every single time over and over and over and over again. I think people are still experimenting. They're still trying to find out. I think the decks are becoming more turbo-y. I think other decks are starting to like eat their vegetables again and put their stuff in that prevents the turbo-y. I think it's going to be a while until things settle out to a more consistent strat. I think what's more fascinating is this, I believe, is one of the first only couple of true wizard events, like Magic Cons, that had a tournament. And it's such a very weird dynamic if you think about it, because it's not hosted by wizards. It's not essentially acknowledged by wizards. It's in fact represented by a third party, but they enforce the no proxy rule because you're in a wizard's sanctioned house. Exactly. And if that becomes more commonplace, you think the meta change now, it's going to change immeasurably.
What do you mean?
Ask yourself this. Out of all your friend group, how many of them have a completely proxy-free deck?
You got to be seriously committed. You just do.
I'm not saying that's not the question, though. How many?
The game is commitment financially, and it's just like, and you can't ask everybody to do that. So percentage of the people that, like I know, that have all real cards is probably higher than most.
But that's because you surround yourself with the group. Yeah. I still think I surround myself with the same parties. But we play a lot of spell table. I still think it's probably maybe 60-40, and I think we're high.
I think most people are in the position where there's the onesies and twosies, the cards that they just don't have.
But sometimes that's enough. Think about it.
It's a big deal. Like
if it's all the
Mishra's Workshop that I have, like I won a game today. The one game that I did win in tournament because of that workshop. Like it came down off the top deck casting at the right time where I'm like, yeah, I could use that extra 3 mana because the next card on top was a Vidal Canori for 4 mana. It's like, if it had been any other land, that might have shut down my storm. Mm-hmm. And if they didn't allow proxies and I didn't have one and I had to replace it with, like, most people would be like, okay, you have your Mishra's Workshop, you put an island in there, you're like, you're good, it's fine, until you run into that specific moment. And that's the problem. It's like, it doesn't matter until it does. Mm-hmm. And you have enough players doing that, and you start to wonder about the integrity of, again, the meritocracy of the format, where everybody's playing at the competitive level, but they're not using the best cards due to financial reasons. And so you're like, okay, well, if I'm trying to come here and prove myself as one of the best players, but there's somebody that's sidelined, mm-hmm. and just isn't able to compete, or is using.
Are you the best player ever if Ian couldn't afford? If the best Urza pilot in the world couldn't afford all the cards? Like, it's a catch-22. I want to support the format. I want our fellow representatives of the sport, of this hobby, of this format to want to invest in these things and have these things and take joy in these things, because it's a point of pride when you have it, right? And I think that, like, having that point of pride is good. On the other hand, exactly that. I don't want to play because my credit card's bigger. I don't want to
Okay.
win this tournament because it's bigger.
Mm.
And I think today, more than any time before, I will stand by the statement that you need to have a little bit for a proxy free tournament. You need to have a little bit of credit card, because I saw what happens when you don't. A
Yeah.
lot of what
Straight up.
happens when you
I
don't.
was looking around. There's other people who are like, they were looking at their, like, it was clear that they'd replaced their dual lands with lands that come in if there's more than two
Tapped,
players.
just
they come in.
general.
I didn't see any like straight like, oh my god, he's
I
playing
did.
tap land.
I saw straight up fetchable like tapped like triomes and
No.
the two landers that don't and such.
See, now we're affecting the integrity of the format. So,
Yeah.
Chandler, he's tired out. He's probably not going to pop on here, but he's one of our proxy players, our beloved proxy players, which is just fine. They deck checked him. They didn't let him compete.
I had a question
He
for
signed
you
up,
about
and
that,
I was wondering if
Chandler.
they would get him a refund.
So the one that you so when you got deck checked,
Yeah.
was it off the back of that D tutor that was clearly a proxy, or was it off the back of a card that was clearly a proxy? Because the majority of your stuff are clearly proxies. Their backs are different. It says on the bottom they're proxies. They're not like they're not counterfeits, but they look like the real card. But you did have like 3 or 4 that are like color inverted or fun.
Oh, so I recently reprinted my entire deck for custom art, essentially, about 80%.
Oh, so okay, never mind.
Because
cheap, by the way. Like, you're spending $1 to a card.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
$2.50, maybe $3 if you're like getting like super great proxies.
yeah, which I don't know. In this case, I'm glad I didn't skate under the radar and break the rules by just being low profile.
Yeah, that's fair.
No, I would have liked to play, and everybody was extremely apologetic and guilty. God, the guy who asked, like, "Is that a proxy?" was like, he wouldn't look at me.
Mm-hmm.
But
Did they report you?
no, he was like, "Judge," and he was like, "Are proxies allowed?" And the guy's like, "Are those proxies?" And I was like, "Yeah, my whole deck is proxies." And they're like, "Oh, did anybody tell you that wasn't okay?" And I was like, "No."
Unacceptable. Nowhere was that like listed
Yeah.
too.
I
I
mean,
mean,
I was like,
no,
I didn't
and
know.
I combed. I didn't like control. I didn't control F the website, but I looked the website.
No, but
And-
it turned into a cascade of escalating judge meetings where they were just like, "You paid to be here. What do we do?" Where
Did
they
you get a refund?
no, but it
No.
got to the point where they were like, "We talked to the top judge. Could you find another deck?" And I was just like, "I'm gonna go," and I left.
At least they tried.
Sure, no, they absolutely tried. They would have let me run literally anything else, but
I wish.
I don't have another deck. It's fine.
Yeah, I wish we had almost known that, like, because then we could have at least given him. I mean, anything.
I think it would have been better if I didn't try to pilot just a deck I don't know out of the gate.
I don't know, because then that 3-pod turned into a weird buy. I've heard of so many strange decisions in this one. There were 3-pods that were like essentially on round 1 forced to play, which is very peculiar. Normally that doesn't happen for quite some time because they can split things up or just issue like a buy equivalence. But I guess you can't do that in sudden death. That's fascinating. Everybody was kind of cavalier. You couldn't hear the announcements. That was a peculiarity because we couldn't know when technically we started. There was no visible timer, and for a tournament that relied on the timer,
So hard.
that's a miss.
I don't want to lose that point, so I'll explain it, opposite of how it chronologically happened. But we were playing, and we started playing because we saw other people playing, and we had a delay, which I'll explain in a moment, where we should have started way before.
Mm-hmm.
And the entire 3 games to our right hadn't started yet. They were all sitting there wondering when to play. And the judge came over, was like, "You guys didn't start? Like, what's going on?" They're like, "Oh, this whole row hasn't gone." And they came by and wrote some sticky note. And I think that they were going to offer an extension. I closed the game out, so I don't know 100% sure if that's what it was. It had some little scribble like 10 plus. And I'm like, are they giving us 10 minutes? I imagine that's probably what they did. I think that the time in between the first round and second round was long enough that maybe they did give an extension somewhere. It seemed like a long time in
It
between
was. Well, they were also manually calculating.
Oh
the
yeah, let's be
papers.
clear. The companion app didn't work, and they were posting this a huge list of players on paper, like Excel spreadsheet on a wall, and you go over, and it was not again alphabetical. The first time it was alphabetical. The second time after the first round, you're looking and you could be anywhere on this list of 30, 40 names.
If there's
It's
any
ridiculous.
silver lining for our favorite Urza boy here, was if he had won this tournament, the irony was he wouldn't have been listed in like Mox or the EDH top 16.
I would have been so salty.
because you would
I would've
there
been
wouldn't have
salty.
been a true reporting.
I feel like any of the it's so unusual. Like at Guardian and some of the PGS ones, I feel like they don't upload the results. They just don't end up on there. And it seems like the ones that I do well, when I'm kind of like getting up there, they just don't put them in. And so I look at my top deck and it's booty.
Yeah, it'll get better over time. I do think at some point there will be like the true Wizards sanctioned, like provided software or something like that. That's a topic for another discussion. But the tournament itself was peculiar. From like a lot of perspectives, how it started, and look, that was probably, it could have been like their first time organizing it. They can't control when the companion app goes down. I'm not knocking it, but it does reinforce the discussion we've had numerous times where we need even if you're not going to recognize it and provide prize support or whatnot, it's like we need an easily followable structure that all tournament organizers can rally behind with like clear decisions on how things happen, what happens, when it happens, how you can organize it for time. And then what that'll do is if you need to go against the grain on the provided things, you can essentially post that. You can let's say Wizards didn't put in a time limit, but for some reason the tournament organizer needs a time limit. They can just say, okay, we're introducing these rules. And what that'll allow players to do is make the decision on if they want to participate in that. Because it's almost like a separate format. Like imagine if we had known that life totals mattered and we went there. We would have brought mono white stack decks life game. Like it's just get life game mono white stack deck. Like meta. There's probably people who did. I know, like, I felt bad because I'm currently on a Bling King Stacks, like, Kenrith build, and I was cracking up because I'm like, people are going to think I meted this. Like, I'm like, no, I swear, this is just my favorite list that I just brought this.
Yeah, there was a couple of other odd things, like in between matches 1 and 2, it was about an hour delay, and all the other local tournaments that are hosted by like our local game stores, they at least have, the names and the pairings and everything put up on a screen somewhere, and they use whatever software. Here it was all printed on printer paper that they hand typed.
One sheet.
Yeah, one white sheet. They didn't have seat
board.
placement.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they didn't have seat placement, so we had to dice roll for each one, and it was purely based on who showed up.
And you didn't even get seat placement. You just rolled for like who's first.
Yeah, it was who first.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I I spoke with one of the other judges after I won my first match, and I was asking them why this was the only EDH organized event at this whole weekend. And this particular judge had been working for a while, and he's been at other Magic or other Wizards hosted conventions like this. And he said, like, frankly, it's because the amount of judge commitment to running one of these things and just shuffling around and all of the coordinating of pairings and everything like that was too much manpower for them to want to commit to it.
Okay. I love that you explained that. Pardon us, technical difficulty there. I love that you explained that, and I'm willing to accept that to a degree. I think that's a lot more logical and sound a reason.
I'm just going
for this.
Told us.
I appreciate that. That's good insight. The only thing I will say is it might require commitment, but Wizards, you're hearing it first. Commit. I was at your Magic Con. Again, what you talk about being like the standard, the vintage, the modern, all those other formats, the limited, whatever. They were there. You walk around that entire con. What did you see at every table? Literally every table, aside from the ones that are playing the standard like event. What did you see? It was Commander. It was Commander. It was Commander. I didn't see two people sit at a table at all
No.
about any ever. And I looked. I saw
They were
there was.
looking for two more
They were looking for
players.
two more players. Exactly.
Another
The learn to play standard booths and like modern booths and things like that.
They were dead.
They were dead. They were, and you know what everyone was
but the
doing?
learned
They were.
cEDH tables that were on the second floor, full nonstop.
Yeah.
Like, people were gathered and watching and learning and everything. They're by like the other content creators.
Yeah.
Something else, like it frankly it was to our advantage, but Wizards is pushing this whole like new tier system and everything, and nobody actually got checked if they were all like tier 5 or even tier 4 decks. And so there was clearly like tier 3 and below decks that were there. They just stumbled in because they learned at some point that they couldn't use proxies.
Yeah.
And so in my first game, two of the players said that they scrapped their decks together the night before because they like just didn't have the cards and they were just winging it. So we had, an Atali and a Rogsai, and they clearly were missing a lot of like the pivotal pieces that were more expensive.
And they might as well be out a lot of the time. Again, it's not, you can't use the crutch of like, well, just get good with the cards you have, and if you're super experienced, you're going to be fine. Yeah, that is going to take you far. That's not how the game works. It doesn't. If the greatest if the greatest marksman in the world is told to hit a target at 2 miles and they give him a 22, and they take the world's second best marksman in the world and hand him the 50 cal, it's too late. The other thing I want to say is, and I want, before we move of that, Porter summed it up best. All those 2s and 3s, right? Like my first one were definitely like 2s and 3s, maybe 4s.
Yeah,
like
great for us.
It swept up. Here's the thing: the bracket system is perfect to run a bracket 3 event. Those guys clearly wanted to play a competitive-ish or even just limited-ish event, but they weren't allowed the luxury. They went up against all the 5s. If you're going to do the brackets, I'm telling you, Wizards, have some fun with it. Have bracket 3 night, put some prize line on the support. Have some bracket 2 nights, bring your precons.
Well, I don't think it was even that. I think it was because they didn't have anywhere else to go, and so
that's what I'm saying. Give them the event.
Only EDH event that was a ticketed event for this entire thing, and so they had to just wing it against actual C decks with the stuff that they had on hand, and they could have had a much better play experience than just getting stomped by a Derevi that's cracked out of his mind.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's funny because the look of acceptance I saw on them.
Every single one of them knew what was about to happen. They knew
they were going to get stomped. They weren't reticent about it. They just kind of knew that was going to happen. And again, you almost feel bad. Like I said, the first pod I played at, me and the Rogthras player felt bad. We didn't do anything to them. Like, we went out of our way to not talk like poorly. We encouraged them for like, hey, good play. We did this stuff, not in a patronizing way, like, because we want these people to have fun and to keep going. But it clearly affected our game, and then it just became, we just both felt awkward about it, and we connected about that after, where it was just kind of humorous.
Yeah, because I was I was 4th place in my first game. And they came with three top tier, C deck commanders. But about turn 2, I realized really quickly that they didn't have the same resources that like my deck had. And so I completely 180 pivoted my entire strategy to just raw dog, a Thoracle, because I banked that they couldn't stop it, and they couldn't.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. So you're our resident Yuriko player. How's it positioned in the meta? Oh, I don't have my mic over here. I'm asking him a question and I don't have a mic.
Hold on, mic check.
Mic check, mic swap. Okay, so you are a resident Yuriko player. That's why he's saying that he was swapping over to the Thoracle from that normal game plan. How do you feel that Yuriko's positioned in the meta? Kind of an interesting one.
I mean, it's been getting like better with each set because she just keeps getting more tools. Like during the Thunder Junction one, where they just pumped out a bunch of those MDFCs. She's just been getting so many tools, and you can't play her the way you used to, where you try to tutor a bunch and top deck manipulate. There's enough of just like beater ninjas that come out, and you change the strategy instead of just trying to get big fatty 15 flips, that you get a series of smaller 4, 5, 6 flips, but you get 3 of them at a time. And so it fills your hand, and then you get to use things like Commandeer. It's one of my favorite spells. And so you can just constantly throw away cards, and people don't really pay attention to you until you're a problem. And so she's felt really strong, especially with how turbo everything is right now. People just burn so much life right at the start that it just shaves down like 1 to 1.5 turns for your Yuriko clock to go off.
I didn't think about that. People are using a lot of life as resources these
Yeah,
days.
I mean, like by turn 2, I see people down to like, like 31, 29, and like I haven't done anything.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, my MDFC lands, they come in, take 3 life, and it feels really bad every time, especially if you have like 2 of those in your opening hand. Yeah. I did want to go over the beginning of my round 1 because it had to do with the way that they just didn't organize this tournament. And I didn't want to lose that point. And I don't know if I told you guys the story. So we sit down, and there's only the 3 of us. There's a guy that's missing. And we don't know how to handle that, so we call over the judge. The judge just doesn't know how to handle it. He goes and talks to another judge, and it's like 310 at this point, and they bring over another guy because his pod also didn't have a person. And they bring him in, and they sit him down, and they adjust the whole thing, and we get our hands. We do the mulligans, we roll, we get our hands, and we're ready to play. It's supposed to start at 3. It's 3:15, and we are asking each other, do you have any pre-games? And the guy that was supposed to be in the original seat walks up. It's like 3:13, 3:15, and walks up. And we looked at him like, oh, are you the guy? And he's like, yes. And so the judge comes over and is like, oh, I don't know what to do. And this really nice guy from San Antonio is like, please don't make me get up again. Like, he just tried to get in his first game, and that one didn't fire because they didn't have the people organized. Moved into a second one. Judges go talk. Jubs comes over and is like, we are going to ask you, Mr. Nice Man from San Antonio, to get up and move. And they give that seat to the guy that showed up late. Now we're sitting down, and the question is, because there's no set rules for turn order or seat order, like, do we re-roll? Like, we've already rolled, we've already got our hands, we've already done all this stuff, we've already done the whole thing. We've mulliganed. Yeah,
Like,
we
that's the big one. I mean, you've already
mulliganed based on seat
one,
position.
your two.
Yeah, so we did the whole thing, and the judge rules we're just going to have him roll, and if he beats the highest previous roll, then we'll redo it. But if he doesn't, which he didn't, then he'll just take his hand as normal and do his mulligans, and you'll just start the game.
So
Wait, did you guys?
And he started second, and
Okay.
and he was second in seat
right,
order.
So here's my next question. When you guys did the 3,
Here, 1 second, re-ask that.
Right. So my first question about this like decision, and again, difficult. First off, to take it all the way back, to solve this issue, they really just needed to do the simple and typically simple thing, and most tournaments do. They tell you to be there at 3. The tournament starts at 3:30, so they can have all the pairings, they can have all the discussions, they can tell everybody about the 75 minutes, all that stuff. They did 3, and then like started frantically putting people, like getting them playing at like 3:05. Like,
dude, it was.
And so that's the first thing. The second thing was,
Yeah.
I had a question for you. So you guys are in this pot of 3. You are about to proceed with this game.
Yeah.
Since there was no seed order, was he there 15 minutes late because of him, or was he there 15 minutes late because they moved him from another 3 pod? Was that clear?
No,
There's a reason asked.
It was clear that
because
the statement that he made was, nobody told me where to go. So you could blame it on tournament misorganization, which I understand.
Yeah, no, but everybody else figured it out, so I'm going to not give him that pass.
Nobody
so
told me
if it was if it was his responsibility to be there and figure that out, which it sounds like it was, then what I would have done in that judge seat was like, maybe we even let him join. Possibly, there's debate about that, but it's like, you're player 4. That's just what it is, right? Like, they already have their seed order.
Lack of recognition over the impact of seed order is frustrating, because that would
it should have just been your player 4. It's like, everybody quickly shift or do whatever.
I was player 4 that game, and I won it, by the way.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't get to go second after being late, and because you wouldn't have even known at the time, and you already messed up the moles. So he doesn't get a pass or doesn't get to roll. But like even then, that if the judge had called that and rolled and he had gotten one, I would have said I am calling for like a everything, because like I kept this hand because I'm on 2. I kept this hand because I'm on 3.
Well,
That's only fair.
that's absolutely like crazy to me because like you mull for very different things depending on your matchups.
Yeah.
On the commander that's at the table.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like, you got to
matchups,
slice her
turn
out,
order.
like, you get removal.
You get removal.
And
yeah.
so like if
What did he play?
I don't actually remember.
Well, it's just funny.
Oh,
if-
no, I do remember. Okay, so he played the mono white Enchantments Matter deck.
Okay, so maybe you wouldn't change a lot of moles, but hey, Thurza bros, thirsty Thurzas. We have a group we got to get to, so we'll have to sign up and pick this
All
up
right.
again later.
All right, gentlemen, thank you for hanging out with us, doing the post game talk. Watch the next one.